Hello traders and good morning and welcome to today's market overview. Just going to run over the major pairs traders and go over what we're seeing in the markets and any potential trading opportunities we can take in the markets. So traders, we know the euro has been under some very intense selling pressure over the last week as the political uncertainty in Italy really made investors nervous about the euro, and this has really been driven by the expectation that the crisis in Italy with the government could cause another election and give the opportunity for Italy to question its membership in the EU, which could basically create another Brexit situation just with Italy, which the markets didn't like and saw as a threat to the Eurozone economy, which is why the euro got heavily sold off across the markets after the political uncertainty starts to unwind in Europe. So traders, what we are seeing today is that as the fears have kind of started to subside, we are seeing the euro start to pull back some of its previous losses across the markets. But with the heightened political uncertainty still very fresh, and with there being no certainty that elections won't happen, the euro is still very cautious. And more importantly, traders, today we have Euro CPI inflation data coming out in 39 minutes, which would be really important because we must remember, traders, the euro has become very weak before this heavy sell-off being driven by the Italian election. The euro had come out of this range against the dollar and been pushed lower because CPI inflation in the Eurozone remains so low, nowhere near the central bank's 2% target. And this is because of basically struggling inflation in the Eurozone, not going around their target, has caused investors not to know if the ECB will end quantitative easing in September or not. And if they don't end their QE program, traders, you must remember that interest rates will not be going up in Europe anytime soon, and markets are now projected until October 2019 for the first rate hike, which of course is over a year away. And this is why the euro has become very weak across the markets, because the expectations of an interest rate hike is now diminishing because of the data. So it would be interesting to see if inflation data comes out positive and stronger. This could support the euro more, but if it doesn't, it remains at the low levels. It doesn't support the euro as much. But traders, what I am looking at is if this political uncertainty in Europe starts to fade in Italy, and say a coalition government can be reached, then we will be buying the euro, because all this selling that's happened in the last week will be bought back, and bring the euro back up to its value where it was before this election. In Italy, saga started to unravel. The markets will push the euro back up to where it previously was, which is around 120 against the dollar, and then we'll see the euro start to push higher against the yen and probably make back all these losses and against other currencies in the market. So with the euro traders, that's the fundamentals driving the price at the moment, and we need to just monitor what happens in Italy, and if the developments can be fixed and a coalition government can be formed, then we want to be buying the euro, because it will be making back the losses it previously made in the markets. Looking at the pound, traders, we know the pound's been really weak as the market sold off the pound because the interest rate hike that was expected in May didn't happen from the Bank of England because of a string of negative data. So the pound heavily got sold off. We made some good profits across the market with the pound, but now it's going to be dependent on what happens with incoming data. Does inflation start to go higher again? And if it does, then this will make the Bank of England have to consider hiking interest rates, and the pound will get stronger. Or if inflation continues to fall, there'll be no expectation of a rate hike and the pound will not get stronger. But more importantly, traders, does wages continue to push higher in the United Kingdom? And that will, of course, start to push higher inflation further down the line. And I did a video on that yesterday explaining how wages impact central banks, inflation and interest rates. So please watch that, traders, and please read that text that's in the analyst feed, and you'll understand the pound sentiment. Looking at the yen, traders, more importantly, we know the yen has been strong across the markets because the safe haven currency flows that poured into the Japanese yen while the political uncertainty happened in Europe. We know the yen is a safe haven currency, but we also know that the yen's low interest rate policy, low inflation, doesn't mean that investors buy the currency long term, and it really only appreciates when there's other weakness in other currencies or the safe haven currency flows. So there is room for other currencies to make back these losses, such as the pound and other currencies that weakened across the markets due to the yen's strength recently. So there will be opportunities to get in against the yen. Just hopefully there's no more uncertainty and no more negative data coming out of Europe, and that will give us some opportunity to make back the losses that other currencies have occurred against the yen, simply being driven by safe haven currency flows, traders. So that's something for us to pay close attention to. I am monitoring yen pairs. I really want to see what happens in Europe, because if the Europe saga starts to fix itself, then all these gains in the yen will be unwound, and it gives us buying opportunities to make profits back against the yen. Looking at the dollar yen traders, it is around our entry point. The support level 108,500 has supported, which is where we entered the market. And now if Friday's NFP data comes out positive and wages start to creep higher, then this should support the dollar to continuous uptrend back up towards 110,500 or 1112, and we'll be holding this trade moving forward. Looking at the Canadian dollar traders, yesterday the Bank of Canada kind of hinted there may be a rate hike coming in the next few months. But of course, it's going to be data dependent. Today we have GDP data, which we highly have a high impact on the Canadian dollar. So we'll be really monitoring this. Let's see how this GDP data comes out today. And we must remember the only shadow of doubt that casts over the Canadian dollar at the moment is the NAFTA negotiations between Mexico, Canada, and the United States. And we know that Donald Trump's threatening to put tariffs on Canadian exports, and this can really affect the Canadian economy because America is their main trading partner, and this is why the markets are a bit skeptical about buying the CAD. Even though we know there may be a rate hike, it really depends on how does NAFTA go. So we have to pay close attention to NAFTA and the Canadian dollar, and hopefully we can get some good buying opportunities for this currency. Really want to be buying against the yen or the Swiss franc to get a good trade for this currency pair. All right, traders, so that's today's markets. At the moment, I don't have any trading setups to buy at the moment. I really want to make sure I can understand what's happening in Europe first. We know the pound, I have to wait for economic data to come out first. We know the Canadian dollar, we have to see how the GDP goes today. And we also have the Euro CPI inflation data today. The Aussie dollar and New Zealand dollar remain just a cautious trade at the moment. There's no real sentiment. As you can see, markets are pretty much has ranged in this little zone for the past week, so there's not really a trend at the moment with these currency pairs. We did see the Aussie dollar making up some ground earlier in the day against the dollar, but it's kind of faltered. We're just under a band of resistance, and we're sitting just below a band of support, above a band of support, sorry. A similar situation with the New Zealand dollar, US dollar, which is kind of making some small gains, but the overall trend is down, so we'd really be looking for sales if we can get back above, if we can start to reach around these resistance levels just above here. Any questions, traders, please ping me a message and I'll be happy to answer your questions. Thank you.